Welcome to this new podcast episode. Today I'm talking to Sophie Le Dorner. Do I pronounce it right?
Le Dorner.
Le
Yeah.
Dorner.
Yeah.
And we've met at a conversation with the IDG practitioners, the Inner Development Goals Practitioners Network. And I got to know a bit about what you do. And I thought that's an interesting story. And let's talk about that. And you work in the field of education. Um, we just had a short conversation before we started this recording. Um, you you are in this field of education, and you've been teaching all over the world. What made it for you when you were younger that you really embarked on this teaching um, field for you? What was it that triggered this for you?
That's a great question. I think it's always been, in fact, inside me, a kind of desire to teach or to facilitate learning. Actually, my mom used to tell me that story of when I was very young. I wanted to teach my brother, who was even younger than me, and I would bring books that I could not even read, but I pretended I was teaching him. So I guess this is how it started. And I think that I've always been, and I think, I don't know if I told you, but I've always been this kind of Alice in Wonderland of learning, this desire of going into some rabbit holes that would trigger some questions and then bring knowledge. And a lot like you, Erno, what I really love is interacting with people to know more about my questions and actually trying to find ways to answer those questions. And so I've been told for many years at school that I'm very much someone who is a dreamer. So that means I'm in my head. So I thought, what about imagining, a classroom that would bring interactions vertically and interactions horizontally, as I say, which is about, bringing those two passionate things that I like and which I'm sure others like. So I've been going in 7 different countries in different environments, whether it was in companies, at universities, in international schools, with the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I've been kind of putting my spying hat on, thinking, oh, what could trigger engagement? What could bring this desire of being okay with uncertainty? Because we don't talk about this. Learning is very much being okay with uncertainty. We talk sometimes about, oh, it's very hard to learn, or it's very stressful, it's tiring, or we're scared to make mistakes. And then we talk about fear sometimes, not much, but we never talk about this learning to embrace uncertainty. And I think that's been my journey. Like, how do we bring in this classroom and outside the classroom, whether it is at home, at school, or at work, how do we trigger this desire to learn more and discover more? So that's my little journey here.
So when I was doing the research for this conversation, I saw on your LinkedIn profile that you have, I think, one of the most educational entrances that I've seen before. And does that mean something that you no, can you bring that into relation to your uncertainty to knowing that you had to do study more and more and more?
Absolutely, no. You're definitely triggering something here. I've had to know more and more because I feel that if I don't know, as a mentor said to me, Sophie, you are in this desire, in this she said something like this that I'm trying to translate from French. She said, you don't want to, let me say it in French in my head. Yeah, you don't want to know everything. You want to know all about everything. And I said, that's exactly right. And so I would just go into, let's say, communication, and I'd think, but that's not enough. I need more. Or I'd go into metacognition. Oh, but that's not enough. I need more. So I needed to make sense of this world. And I went into all those paths. So I thought about, oh, the learning through the body, embodiment. Yeah, but we need to learn in a systemic way, not systematic. So I went on into different paths. And in fact, it kind of helped me. And I really like what you're asking me, Erno. It kind of helped me be okay with uncertainty, because I realized, well, Sophie, every path you take, you don't know. And as Marcelo Starikov says in his book, it is to embrace this joy of not knowing. And I thought that's maybe what my journey has been on, for a long time.
Joy of not knowing.
I love that title.
Yeah, it is. That is interesting. I was just reading in this book about what's the effect called again? The Kruger. What's it? The Kruger effect, something. The Dan Kruger effect. I forgot what it was.
The Kruger effect. Yes, yes, yes.
So
I can't remember either, but
yeah.
yes.
So it is the idea that if you know nothing, it seems very easy, right? So, and then because you know nothing, you act if you know everything about it, because you think you're very good at it, but you don't know everything, and that's why people can see that you're not good at it, but you are the one who can't see. Then you start to learn more, and you go and you become even a bit more uncertain, because you discover that you don't know a lot about this topic. And I think that's exactly what I've been experiencing in a number of fields that I've been working in lately. And I really don't know a lot about this topic. And I'm okay with that. It's not that I'm not okay with that, but it also makes me feel that it's difficult. So how do you make decisions when you don't know enough about the topic, and everything is uncertain and unclear, and you want to make a good decision, right? So so how do you embrace then this uncertainty? How do you do this?
I love it. I think that by just becoming aware, first of all, that it's okay to be in this uncertainty is, I think, what makes that brings a huge impact, in fact, on number one, becoming conscious of the fact that we don't know is how we know. Becoming aware that we are okay with uncertainty is how we will learn. And and that's my second, I would say, way of being in the world now, it's about taking every situation as a challenge that is about to be revealed. And it's like opening the Pandora box, like, oh, I used to just be stuck, and now I'm aware that I am stuck, and I know that I'm not going to be stuck forever, because the stuck doesn't stay. So I'm just going to let go of the stuck and be okay with that stuck and see where that stuck brings me, in a way. So this uncertainty is part of this being okay with being stuck, and opening this Pandora box of, oh, I'm maybe going to learn something behind that curtain of feeling stuck. So it's much more a feeling, like you said when we connected, like I'm feeling this. I think it's a feeling, and we've learned to think about learning, but we haven't learned how to feel about learning. So that's maybe my third idea, is maybe to be okay with uncertainty is to transform this thinking into maybe a feeling. Maybe sensing knowledge might be an idea, or it could be a possibility that would bring on this being okay with uncertainty. So those are my maybe 3 ideas. I could go on because because this is a topic that I've always been intrigued by, really.
And I see what you're saying, and I also think so feeling, but experiencing, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And through experiences, you are in fact okay to feel because you just don't know where it's going to bring you. It's a little bit like I love the metaphor of the paraglide. It's like paragliding. When you first jump, gosh, it feels scary. And then you become okay with this experience of paragliding, and then you just look around, and even though it's still this emptiness that you're fearful of, you become okay with the experience of feeling maybe fearful at first. So
That's a beautiful metaphor. Yeah, interesting. I think I think in the educational system, um, when we are younger, a lot has to do with what's going on in the brain. So we learn a lot from books, and we get tested. The knowledge is in our brain and our memory. Um, and you've written a book, and the agility of mind: how to turn children into engaged learners. Why is that important to you that children become engaged learners? I would say children are naturally engaged learners, right?
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. It's the reason why I wrote this book, and I wrote down this sentence that might really bother some of human beings on this planet. They might be thinking, we don't need to engage them. We don't need to push them forward. It's when you go into the book, you'll see that it's actually the tool that you've got to use, which is about being okay, to empower them and being okay with not engaging them. So even though I'm writing down this subtitle, I would say, about how to engage learners, uh, it is not about forcing them to becoming it. It's not pushing them to paraglide if they don't want to paraglide. But I wrote it for teachers who might be wondering how to do this.
Right.
And I would love to enable them to wonder and wonder about the fact that the more we push, the less we engage. And bringing this power in being empowering. I don't like this big word, but in a way, this is what we talk about in education, but empowering students to learn about themselves, about their emotions, about how they think, about their behavior, about who they are. This is how you can empower them and engage them in a way, because the more they will feel safe and be okay to jump and paraglide, the more they will be engaged, or not, but they will be citizens of the world who will be able to choose whether they want or they don't want. Because in a complex world, if we bring students into one way of thinking and bringing material to them and say, well, this is how history has been revealed in our country. For me, this is not how it should be done anymore. We need to bring them to become, to bring them into, to turn them into citizens and citizens of the world who will be able to act accordingly. with moral aspects, and knowing themselves better and feeling what they are learning is maybe one way to engage them. So engaging here is much more how to, in a way, bring up students who will be more engaged in the world at large. So that was my idea. But I really love your questions because I've had this question many times. And I wrote this book to bring ease into the system in a way, or this sounds maybe a little bit too much. Maybe ease is not the right word, but in a way to ease this sense of fear, like I don't know how to teach anymore. I don't know kids anymore. I don't know how to make them behave well and not well, this dualistic world of it's not okay if they don't sit down properly anymore. So I just wanted to bring this book, which is at this moment in time, or that was already a year ago, that was at a moment in time in my life when I thought, how could I contribute to this world? What is it that I want to bring through my beautiful experiences, through those interactions I've had during all those years? So that's when I decided to write this book.
Are you ready to write a new book?
Not yet. And if I do, I think I will do it with Marie Legrand, the person I've been working for a while now. And Marie Legrand and I are on a new journey. And it's not a book that we're bringing up at the end of this year. It's a card game, a concept game that actually will bring, we hope, we want a collective or we would like to bring a collective intelligence, whether it is at home, at school, at work, to bring this sense of shared humanity and just in a way interact with each other and learn together. Because we talk about learning development or individual development, and I believe that it's not individual anymore. It has to be learning together and knowing how we can connect with each other to enable this new world to evolve. So both of us decided to bring this concept game that is about to be released. And maybe after this concept game, we will write a book together, because I think this is where I want to be now. Not anymore me, but the we of Dan Siegel, which is the me and the we. And I really think that we are stronger together in a way.
How does this connect for you with the inner development goals?
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. When I discovered the inner development goals, it was thanks to a friend of mine, Karine Kizou, with whom I had a whole year of consulting in Kurdistan at the university, the American University of Kurdistan. And when we met, she said, Sophie, you really have to look into the IDGs. And I will always remember my face. I was in Belgium and I said, what is this? And I thought, oh my God, another new thing, And then when I saw the IDG framework, I thought, oh, in a way, this is a little bit like my 5 Cs at my little level. And I thought, oh my gosh, I need to know more. So Alice in Wonderland was again into this happy zone of, oh, let's dig into it. And I felt that it was all about my message in a way. This shared framework was about my shared language. Because in the book that I wrote, I shared this idea of sharing a language that connects us all as learners. And so when I saw the IDG, which was for the SDGs, I thought, oh, it brings this to another level. And I really think that it is a brilliant way of relating my work to this work, because it brings more to this world. And so when Nadège Ravou and I have been working now with companies around learning together in a way and building teams to another level, it sounds a little bit pretentious, but the idea behind what we do and all the trainings we do is around the IDGs. It's how we can contribute to a better world, but it's very down to earth. The trainings that we facilitate are very down to earth. And I thought that the IDGs would bring this level up to another level. So that's when Nadège and I decided to open a hub here in Luxembourg, which of course, led us to another story. So, and that's why we met and how we met. So that's brilliant.
If you think about that part of the IDGs in your work, I was also thinking about companies, because you've been also working a lot with companies now. And I was thinking about the onboarding process and the relationship with the conversation you just shared with the book and the teaching and engaging children. I think if I look at onboarding of most companies, it is that you give them like a book. Well, it may be digital, but still a book or something where they can learn how you as a company work, the culture, all the processes, all the procedures. And there's almost no, for me, it feels like that, to be sure. It's almost no space to learn from the new person who comes into the company and being, of course, we say that. We say, you're new, let us know what's wrong and let's know what you think is different or what you would change. But of course, that doesn't really happen because you are rolling into their procedure and just learning and learning and learning. And suddenly you become one of the team members instead of just like being on the same level of kind of learning. How do you see that? How would you improve that?
I love what you're sharing, because you're giving me a bridge to the new work that we are putting in place with Marie, which is about bringing this sense of safety, psychological safety from Amy Edmondson, but through a card game that would be distilled all through the year. And those cards can be pulled out during meetings so that people get to know each other better and feel that they can say, well, I don't know, or I made a mistake. Because you're right. If we bring on new people in the team, and whether they're from another culture or they have another language or they work through Zoom or Teams or another device, we usually don't take this time and we just tell them, oh, be okay to express yourself. But they don't know yet, whether they can do it or not. We need to, in a way, I believe, create spaces, interaction spaces, we call them with Marie, which could be, and that's from me, like some kind of rituals that would enable teams to little by little connect with each other. And there's a beautiful work from Chad Littlefield, which is about connection. I have it here. But he created some card games called We Connect. And that's how we decided with Marie to keep on working around this idea of connection. But we did it at a different level, since we both believe that having a shared language can enable the team to bring this psychological safety. So we kind of got inspired by Chad Littlefield through those beautiful cards. and all his work. And I was really inspired by him during COVID, because I met him through a program which was a program called Thought Leadership. And the thought leaders actually helped me write this book that you're talking about, because I was too fearful at that time to do it. So Chad Littlefield and all the team of those thought leaders brought up, in a way, the book and the cards. And the cards are to really bring this this feeling at ease together, and being okay with not being okay. So that's the answer of your question.
How do you feel? How you learn? How do you, as Sophie, right? So not as a person, but how do you, as Sophie, learn a lot? Because you mentioned being okay with not knowing. We mentioned experience. We mentioned engagement. We mentioned before about culture, about the people that surround you, your upbringing. You read, obviously. You write. So what for you brings you the biggest learnings in life?
I love it, because that was my interrogation, or my inquiry lately. It's been a real big challenge for me to answer that question. But I realized that it's like salt and pepper. I need to have some moment of inquiry, some moment of interactions, and some moment of actions. And that's why we love, Marie and I, this word of interactions, because in a way it has this inner interaction, so this exchange moment, and this action mode. And I think that those three modalities are the modalities that have helped me learn really best. But I used to think it was just by absorbing. I thought, oh, just absorbing is okay. I can have insights, whether it is absorbing thanks to interactions like we are having now, or just by reading a book. I thought, yeah, it comes and then whoop, it just changes me. When I realized actually that it was through actions, I thought, how do I bring this courage of acting? How do I do that? And so some people will say, oh, it's about confidence. It's about, this sense of efficacy, this sense of feeling motivated, so many things. And I thought, hang on, for me, it is about trying the new as if I was just in a new learning curve, in a way, and being okay with this joy of not knowing. But it took me a long time to understand that. And actually, when I was having a coffee during COVID, I will always remember, it was a morning. Both my boys were studying online, and my husband didn't have his break yet. And I just went, oh, I know how I can learn best. Oh, wow. I realized that all this experience with meditation and letting go was really part of what I had been trying to overcome, in a way. Overcome is maybe the wrong word. Again, I think it's just being okay with this sense of letting go or not letting go. This feeling of, in fact, at ease, but this overcome, for me, this idea of, oh, I can be okay with this. Wow. And I will always remember my husband's face when he pushed the door and saw my jumping around. And I said, well, then I'm going to have to do something. I'm going to have to act. So that's when I decided to write a book, and then I decided to create some trainings that would not be as they are. Usually trainings are very much linear, and facilitating is much more what I really like. But like, for example, on Friday, I completely did it differently. And I love doing things and acting, but putting into action what I believe could really work for people, and bring an environment where they can really learn together, but learn individually and learn together. So action, I think, was the step that I was missing for a long time.
I, um, I remember last week we had a meetup of the IDG hub in my area, in the Achterhoek, and there was a professor. We had invited a professor to talk about the IDG in education. Well, as always, professors are quite stubborn, so he takes a different route, which I feel was fine because the whole idea, because his knowledge is into the fields of technology and brain. So he's really about brain and psychology and technology. And he gave us a great story, which also made us go like, I really don't know anymore. I really don't understand anymore. Does it really make sense? The things that we do, does it really make a difference what we do? So there was a lot of um, anxious feelings with people, the attendees,
Mm.
unease, uncertainty. And then, so he had a question for us and how this would influence, how this would be in relationship to their work. So we went into two different groups and we had a conversation about that for like 15 minutes. It was not long, but it was long enough to see also how we could use this idea. And then we came back and I thought, so how do I bring this to the next level? How do I make again the connection that people really feel what they can do? And I did an exercise with them. So that's like this conversation. Every time you use what's going on um, to find the next opportunity to learn, to ask the next question. And the same thing was here. The things that happened there, the feelings that were there, and then thinking of what can we do now to bring it to the next level, or to bring it to more ease, to bring it to hope. So every time thinking not, okay, this is the program and I need to follow this, but just think, okay, how can we do this? How can we bring it to the next step? How can we do it now so that people really feel that it was a great experience, and they think about the IDGs, the inner development goals, as a tool that they can use for their next step. So that to me was, like you just described, I think is really important. Um, if you are educating someone, it has to do a lot with what's happening at the moment, what's going on in their environment, what's going on now, like the war in Israel, for example, so, or the war in Ukraine. So how does that influence our learning today? And so there's so many things. If you stick to the curriculum,
Yeah.
um, I think you lose a lot of opportunities to really learn, right? And then I was thinking about what you're just saying about the three things, right? So absorbing, being with yourself, and also like meditation, being still, and then reading, and then interacting. So learning in the conversations with other people, and then acting, right? Doing something what you've learned so that you can really experience. And that's exactly how we as a team from the hub has also created the content every month. And I was thinking about this warm data by Nora Bateson. Um, so what she's explaining is that the learning really starts when you have conversation with the other person, right? So she's like painting a cloud. When you have two people thinking, there's a cloud just above each person's head, and it just sticks with them, and you're in your own world, and you think about things you can, but in a relationship to what you know. And if you are conversing and having a conversation with someone, there is forming a cloud between two people, and you get new ideas, you get different perspectives, other cultures that influences your ideas. And I think that's really interesting to see. And I listen to what you're sharing, what you're telling me is exactly that, right? It's exactly about using circumstances, having conversations, but also doing, right? Everything that actually is also within the inner development goals, the domains, right?
Exactly. And at that moment, I think that whether we are at ease or not, because learning is not easy, or it's not putting people at ease in a way. I mean, learning, we keep thinking that learning is easy peasy and oh, well, we can, but learning affects us, changes us, and it can be really uncomfortable, extremely uncomfortable. And so if we let learners know that this is going to happen, in a way, this joy of not knowing will become, that's why I keep saying ease, will become easier in a way. Again, I haven't found yet a word that would work. But I so agree with you. The more we interact with each other in an easier way, or in a transparent way, maybe that would be a better word, the more we learn, and the more we're okay with changes, and having this moment of not knowing, because this is what needs to happen in the moment.
You are giving me some great um, comfort in not knowing a topic that I'm struggling, right? It's not struggling, but I'm working on at the moment. So that's really nice. Thank you for that. How would you, well, of course, you have now your card game that you're developing, but how would you advise, let's say, leaders in a company to encourage and to stimulate and to facilitate an environment where people are okay with not knowing?
I love that. I think just by, there's a word, there's a word that is not coming, but by showing themselves that they don't know. So they could say at the end of a feedback moment, or a one-to-one moment, sorry, they could say, so how could I improve myself? What could I do to help you become better or happier? Or better is not the right word again, but modeling, that's the word I was looking for. Modeling this behavior, I think, is the biggest, has the biggest impact, or can have, or might have, because I think it's better to use the conditional in that sense. It might have a really good impact, because by modeling this sense of not knowing what Erno is going to tell me, I will show them that it's okay. It's okay to actually make mistake, or it's okay to ask questions, because my leader is asking me questions.
And at the same time, when you do that, I can understand also the uncertainty. Um, I'm not sure. Maybe it's specific to male or more specific to males. I'm not sure, but I'll leave that out for now. But also both ways, right? It makes you uncomfortable as a leader, because you are the leader. You feel that you need to of course, you're setting a sample with the ideas showing that you're not knowing, but also that makes you maybe less valuable
Off.
as a right as a leader, but also as somebody who is trying to follow you as a leader.
Mm.
And you see that the leader is not knowing, then you go like, well, is he the right person to follow if he doesn't know, if she doesn't know? So I can see that also at the same time it brings a lot of well, I'm okay with being uncomfortable. That's not the point, but I think it's the part where you may lose your leadership.
Mm. But that I love it because on Friday someone said to me, "Oh, but I will feel or appear too soft." And how do you feel being soft and being vulnerable? And I think that we've been talking about this for years, right now. Vulnerability is really what can bring a learning culture to life. However, by just stating this and saying, I know at this moment in time what I would like to do, and I'm going to share it with you. But there's one thing I'd like you to know is that we will learn together, and whatever you bring on, and bring in and on, I will value it as much as I will value your feedback. So please, let's interact between two human beings and have this shared humanity, which is vulnerability, in the middle as a kind of agreement between each other. And I think by stating it in a transparent way and being open to this, because we're in a complex world, there are so many things that we don't know. And that's why I'm trying to say I should not say should, or I should not be generalizing of what works, what doesn't work. And that's why I think we should be using, in a way, so should be using the conditional, because again, giving pieces of advice is so difficult, I think. It's so different for each other. It's different not only as a human being, but also where you live, the environment where you are. Living in Laos, and I mean in Asia, Laos, Singapore, and Thailand, I've seen a lot of different ways of being, but as a generalization. And I see differences in Europe and in the US, and so if and that's what I believe, if we can be transparent in our shared humanity, I think this might help move forward towards a better future, because that's what we are connected to, both of us. And having this shared humanity, a language, that's what I've been writing in my book, but like having a shared language, because that's what connects us as humans. We talk, right, through a language. And of course, you're from Holland and I'm from France, and the English language connects us. But if we could bring on this how we learn together, I really think it might make a difference.
I'm thinking now about the two things in this is I recently spoke to Lisa Dulans. She's Dutch. She's a Dutch philosopher, and I think talking to Tom, we do a book podcast every 2 weeks. We read books and then we discuss them, mostly books for entrepreneurs. But he's an historian, so he knows a lot about where things are coming from, what were the original ideas behind this and stuff like that. So he always brings me with new ideas, and he talks about that philosophers and artists are probably the people who's going to show a direction to the new world, right? So I've been reading her book, which is called Apocalypse Sophie. So it is about realizing that we are at the beginning of the apocalypse. It's not that we are before it, we are already in it. So the change is already happening that we cannot do anything about it. And that can be a very dooming sight and a dooming idea. But what she says is, if you look at one side, you have the people who have very positive mindset and go like, oh yeah, we can innovate our way out of this. And if we just grow harder and just grow greener, everything will be just fine, right? And then we have the other side with the people like the Club of Rome, who say, no, we are doomed, so there's nothing that we can do. We are just going in this wrong direction, and we need to like degrow for anything that's negative. And as she is saying, she's talking in Paris and other French cities I'm not sure what century she was talking about, but there were people in the Renaissance, I think it was, who are like collecting small particles of clothes maybe and fabric, and they live from the waste of the wealthy people, right? So they managed through the waste from the wealthy people. So collectors of fabrics would be the English translation of this. And she says, well, if we realize that we are at the beginning of the apocalypse and we become okay with that, right? I think that's what we were just talking about. We become okay with that idea, and we can look for a different path. So not the path of we need to grow harder and grow greener, or the path of we are doomed. We can look for, and I don't know the path, but we can look for a different one. And that's the same thing as the professor was saying. He says we are going in the really wrong direction. He's giving us really fact-based ideas about technology, how it's growing, how we are just eating the planet and our life on the planet by just to build more technology. We are actually eating the living organisms on the planet, right? With the amount of dead the dead materials on the world is at the moment even bigger than the materials who are alive on the world. In 2050, this will be 2 times as much as the living stuff on the planet. And that if you look at those facts, you think there's no way back. So it's just going fast and fast, and there's not much we can do about it. And then he says, in the conversation I have in the podcast with him, I see this, and at the same time, I'm just continuing my work and just living my life at the moment without knowing how I can be a good example or how I can do this. Because right now, I don't know it either, right? So he's very open to see this is happening, this is the data, this is the facts, this is scientific. But at the same time, I don't know how to work with it either. So I think that is it's an interesting way of becoming a leader in a new world, right? So that you are feeling so safe with your position that you are able to talk about it that you're saying, I'm okay with not knowing. I can show you the facts that I know, what I know, but also the stuff that I don't know. And I'm okay with that part. So I like that part a lot. I'm making a long story, but I'm just trying to share with you how I like what you're just saying there. Before you mentioned the 5 C's.
Yes.
Can you share us a bit about what's going on there?
Yeah, I actually, as I was sharing with Marie Legrand some years ago, some of my work, she helped me kind of come up with some 5 C's. So again, by interacting with people and with I would say with learners, because I like saying this, and I did it also with someone. So I'm going to come to my 5 C's, but by learning also with Andrew Mowat, who created EduSpark. I was working with him in Singapore. I came up with those 5 C's because I thought, hang on, what is it that we could we could need, or we could bring into the classroom, because this book is about learning. So I thought, hang on, we need maybe consciousness. We need to bring this awareness of learning. So this, what we called inquiry, that is already done in a lot of different schools. But we could give this moment of inquiry and really explain it clearly. And I came up with this 4-color approach, which is not from me. It's actually from Brigitte Boussois, who has been using this approach. So she's French, but she's using it as a behavioral approach, a communicational approach, and then created a learning approach called funny learning. And so when I met with her, I believe maybe now it's about 7 years ago, when I arrived here in Luxembourg, I thought, hang on, if we could be conscious of how we learn, how we behave, and how we communicate with each other, that would maybe be useful. And I thought, but we need this to be at home and at school, because then parents might be feeling at ease again by sharing those learning moments with their children or their learners. Because what I've noticed lately is that through all those differences that, yes, we have a lot of differences in learning. This, to me, appears like it's bringing more and more fear into families and more fear at school, because teachers are thinking, whoa, I've got to differentiate, and there are so many different ways of doing it. And then at home, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? He has ADHD and he has dyslexia. And so I thought, okay, hang on. If we could have a colorful approach, a conscious, colorful approach of becoming, conscious of how we learn, how we behave, and how we communicate, that might help and that might soothe the learning process. So that's my first C of consciousness that I could talk about for ages. And then I have my second one, which is about connection, because I thought motivation is about, we talk about motivation, and motivation is about this love of learning, this love of challenge. But how do we connect with ourselves and connect with the content and connect with others? Not knowing who we are, not knowing our strength and our areas of development and those mindsets and those mind locks or mind bugs or cognitive biases. How do we do this? So how can we move towards ourselves and others? So that's my second C. And then the third one, which is funny, because this C, Marie really kept saying, Sophie, creativity is important. Creativity is the one I really want. And I thought, I want curiosity. I want curiosity because I think for teachers, if we could bring this curiosity in the classroom of not knowing, without bringing the content, without bringing the solution up, right up front, which could be facilitating and teaching, but facilitating and teaching. And that could be also having this head, heart, and body curiosity of sensing knowledge of, how do we process this state of high receptive process the learning. By how do we do this? Do we place this high receptivity by bringing a question, on day one, or I remember doing this in Singapore, coming with a hostess suit in the classroom, and with this little Air France, because I was teaching French And so with this little Air France message, so that they just go, oh, what's going on? What is she doing? But how do we co-elaborate those strategies of curiosity? So bringing autonomy and bringing this sense of being okay with not bringing up front the knowledge, I thought that might be another very interesting C. And then confidence. And confidence for me is about having some tools of learning how to learn. What does that mean, being attentive? What does that mean to reflect? What is it when people tell you you don't understand? What is it understanding? What does that mean, memorizing? All those gestures, as Antoine de la Garandrie called them, those 5 gestures. How do we imagine, like you said, Erno, how do we imagine another way of living the future? And imagination is so important in there. So for me, this is all about confidence, being confident of knowing that we have everything within us. We especially by exchanging and by connecting with each other and connecting with the content, taking time to do this. And the fifth one is about communication. Because as we said, we learn by ourselves, but we learn with others. And bringing this interaction in the classroom, bringing interactions, multiplying interactions, creating constellations and accountability is great. But how do you do that in a classroom when you hear children now say, well, he's not this and he's not that, and like, oh, he's not fast enough, oh, he's not, so how do we bring this communication to another level in the classroom? So again, I took this colorful approach and I embedded a pedagogical idea with a communication idea inside those 4 colors, so that everybody has a shared language that they could bring up in the classroom. And I think for me, creating those 5 C's was about finding a way to bring this awareness of learning or transferring knowledge, of being more aware of this shared humanity in a way. Does that make sense?
I thought, I'm saying thinking a lot, but maybe I should say feel in this case. I feel that your next book is ready to see the light, because these 5 C's, you talk about the classroom, about students, but I think the same to be explained and shared and experimented with in companies and teams. And I think if you would, when you would write the book, when you would publish the book, it would be really helpful for leaders and for teams to build this better team. And I was looking at your resume and I go like, oh, that's interesting. It's funny learning, right? It already sounds, it's not your idea, but it already sounds like, oh, that sounds like fun. No, that sounds like, oh, that could be something that it made me a joyful feeling by reading it already, right? So I thought, oh, that's really a great idea.
Yeah. Oh, you would really like it. It hasn't been translated in English, but Brigitte and Jean, both of them were together and wrote this book together. And those 2 people together are extremely powerful. They bring up so much love, into the learning process. And of course, at first I said to Brigitte, you can't call it like this. Why did you do this? And I said, it doesn't make sense. And we had a little exchange. And that was the first time I met with her. She was quite open to be okay with me saying, this is a silly title. But in a way, this is all about having fun, in a way. It's bringing pleasure, which doesn't mean that it's not going to be painful, but pleasure and pain are, obviously needed in the process. One doesn't go without it. But being okay with this, again, I think makes a huge difference in this approach to learning. So, and we learn, and I really like what you just said, because about a week ago, I sent a message to a friend of mine. I said, I think I know what I'm doing in this world. And she started laughing. And she's like, well, 51, that's pretty good. As people say, because I always think, who am I? Who am I? And I think it's a lifelong journey, right? To know who you are. So that's a joke between friends. And I said to her, I think I know. I think it's about bridging this gap of at home, at work, at school. Why do we have those silos, And that's exactly, what you just shared. And that's just amazing that you're mentioning it now, because I wish I had my phone next to me. Even though it's in French, you would have seen my little message going, yes, that's what I want, bridging the gap. Because we keep thinking, well, at school, this is the way, at home, this is the way. And in fact, I think being like René Lertzman says, like being guides of change is, whether it is at home, at work, at school, it's about guiding change, like you said in the presentation of your book. And I think that's maybe what could be taught at school. How can you guide each other? How can we guide ourselves? How can we bring this sense of unity in a group? That doesn't mean that we are going to be always happy with each other and okay with each other. In fact, just being okay with not agreeing and not being here to listen, to control, that would make a huge difference. Because sometimes we might do this, or being, we're listening to make sure that we are going to have the last word. So in a way, guiding change, I think that could be the future. I don't know. I love the word guide. I really think this is a gorgeous word.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, I think that's a really great idea. Instead of leaders, calling them guides, right? So I think a leader can be a great guide instead of knowing, but living by example, like you earlier mentioned, doing the things that are uncomfortable and be open and be okay with not knowing. The silos as well. I think the whole inner development hubs, what I've experienced, at least in what we try to do with our team, is to make sure that we bridge those silos between education, care, companies, citizens, and governmental bodies, so that as humans, we learn from each other and we get to understand why people in these different silos think differently or why they act differently, and how we can get closer by, like you just mentioned, using a shared language. And that's why I think the framework is a good tool to have this shared language. And since these skills in this framework are just so universal, everybody understands them, right? Everybody knows about them. You may have like a different annotation or a different feeling with it, but still everybody knows about those skills. So that makes it easier to use them as a shared foundation on a language base. So yes, I like that a lot. I want to wrap this up because we can talk so long about this topic that I think it would be easier to invite you back in a later phase when you have the book or the cards are ready to are launched and you have experience with it, how it's working. I think that would be great to share those again. I think it's easier to do that, to open up for a next discussion and to learn more than to continue this for next hour. Because we could, of course.
We could.
Yeah. Is there anything that you still want to share now?
I would just be very grateful, I think, for this moment that you've given me. And I think that is also helping me to overcome the fear of not knowing, because I don't have many podcasts, you see, moments. So I think I've learned a lot here by doing with you. And I think being grateful is also something I like finishing with in trainings. And I think it makes sense to me to just say thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, for connecting with my uncertainty, not knowing the questions in advance. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. And for me, I've long overcame that uncertainty by not knowing the questions, because I know they will just come. Even the first question will just come when I did the research and we start the conversation. The first question will come. And if it doesn't come, there's something else. We'll just make sure that we start the conversation. I think I like that part, that uncertainty. Because for me, I think it's a similar what we just talked about, right? So having like a curriculum of this conversation, or just being very curious, like in your 5Cs, to really want to go and investigate and learn from you and see what you have to say instead of thinking what I know about education, for example, right? So I think that's what I like. So thank you for that, Sophie.